Have a story to tell? I believe you. Ghost, cryptids, the unknown. Let's talk about it. This is my GhostCast. Hi, and welcome back to my GhostCast. My name is Thraz Gonzalez. I have one of my buddies here as a guest, Lydia Ortega Tortuga. And today's guest is Corpus Christi's own Ed and Lorraine, my good friends David and Laura. Hey, guys, please introduce yourself to the audience.
I'm his wife.
And I'm David Lamb. I'm my own wife.
David has the coolest last name, man. I always loved his name. I was like Lamb, you know. And then if you hit somebody with what's called a shuto, you can make lamb chops. Get it?
All right.
No.
Yeah, I wish that I knew that when I was like in fifth grade, because it wasn't a good name to have in fifth grade.
Oh, really? So
and my main name is Bautista.
Oh.
In translation for English, is Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So I was picked on with my last name. I was the only Bautista in school everywhere I went. So when they figured it out, what it meant, I was in trouble.
Well, good thing Nacho wasn't around back then.
Nacho.
Yeah. You're Baptist.
Well, Lydia has Cervantes Tortuga Horta. She's got a whole bunch of Spanish last names. She's a good friend of mine. And guys, just to let everybody know, we're using her studio for now, keeping it simple. Her studio, she let us come out here. I'm in Corpus Christi doing this. This is going to be awesome. This is going to be fun. By the way, David and I know each other all the way from high school. Same thing with Lydia Ortega Tortuga. She was back in high school with us. David, anything you want to bring up from the old days?
I just figured out that you hated being called Rudy back then.
You had to put that on the show. Thanks, man. Yeah, Dave was one of the old headbangers from back in the day. He had long, beautiful hair, but the nicest, softest face. It was like, he's like, hey, he was always soft spoken. Hey, just y'all know that kind of hurt my feelings. Walk on.
She loves that.
You know what? Thanks for giving me that.
Yeah. The bad thing about being a believer, you get butthurt a lot.
I'm a Scorpio, so I'm right there with you. In the house. You Scorpio too?
Halloween, baby.
Oh, dude. Is man, I don't know. I might see if I can take her up as my co-host in the future, but this woman does so many things. Lydia, please tell the audience who are seeing you for the first time. A little bit about yourself.
Licensed private investigator
She
in
goes
Corpus
lighter,
Christi, Texas. And this is actually my daughter's sound room, but she does do sound editing when I need it for my I do surveillance. Don't use a lot of sound for what we do, but sometimes we need to. So that's what I do.
And she's wearing all-time favorite gear, grunge style. Hopefully I'll get them as they'll jump on here as sponsors for our show. In the meantime, we have David and Laura. Please tell us about y'all's ministries.
All right. We are basically Bible teaching ministry. We believe that the Word of God has power to it, and when it comes to life, and it comes to family and marriage and lifestyle and work and the way you treat others. Mainly, you know, I live by treat others the way you want to treat yourself, and that is all over the Bible. And I love to be able to teach it to others and help other people through it, because it helped me basically. The Bible brought me out of a very, very, very dark place, and it saved my life, and then it also saved our marriage. And so I just wanted to share the same hope that it brought to me, to other people like me in the past that never knew of the hope that was within it. So our ministry is like straight up, we just teach from the Bible, and then we do it like totally chill. Like, it's no dogmatic stuff where people don't understand what in the world we're talking about, or one man's opinion or view. It's just straight up, we read, we teach what it says. You know, we teach, you know, how Jesus was, you know, not how some people paint him out to be, but just who he was as a person. And, you know, because the religion can get very tricky. And what's the irony in all this is I hated church. Growing up, I hated church. I hated religion. Well, it had nothing to do with it. But I knew that God was real, you know, and that's the craziest thing. It was so like, I don't know, like a paradox. I didn't like going to church. I didn't like a lot of things I saw. I know a lot of people say, well, church is full of hypocrites. And they're right. You know, that's part of the reason why I didn't like going there. And then lo and behold, I ended up becoming a pastor. So it's like, whoa, this is crazy, right? Yeah. But no, and I love it. I mean, and the people that we have, I mean, it's not a very big church. And these people are real, like, they're real. They're the ones that actually go and practice what they're hearing, you know, compared to being like judgmental and in their way or the highway. They're actually pretty real folks, man, and they're really cool. You know, all ages. You know, we have young ones to people that are older, and we just love them. It's like a whole other family. So I know you can relate with what you do, you know, as far as your family and in the martial arts and everything. But that's what it is.
Yeah, we roll.
Keeps us going every day. I see little miracles every day.
Yeah, we roll pretty tight, especially my school. But other martial arts, it's there's a parallel in that. It's really interesting, you know. But yeah, except, you know, we'll like kill everybody in the room, you know. So it's like, I'm serious. No. Oh, am I? No. Anyways, well, cool. All right. Well, cool, man. Just so that everybody knows, this is David and Laura. They got a story for us. Actually, they got a few stories and some really interesting evidence that we're going to be displaying here. But right now, we're going to step off to a small break. Again, this is Therese at My GhostCast. And the little person next to me right there, that's Lydia. And we'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to My GhostCast. I'm your host, Therese Gonzalez, with my mini co-host, Lydia Tortuga Hormiguita. She's here. We have our guest today is Corpus Christi's own Ed and Lorraine's David and Laura. Welcome back, guys.
Good to be back.
Yes.
So, all right, they're going to tell us their first little bit of their first story. All right, guys, it's yours.
Cool. Well, I believe that my wife and I were destined to be together. And I know that sounds so sweet and romantic, but I think it's true because God kind of prepared us for what we were going to be facing as we went into ministry and fought the good fight of the light. And in order to fight the good fight in light, there's something you obviously have to fight, and the fight actually picked on us first. But before we even get to that, that'll be our last story. A little bit of background on our lives. I was sensitive as a child, and I couldn't tell you the exact age, but when I was 3 years old, roughly in that time frame, is the first time I ever dreamed or saw a demon at my grandmother's house. My grandmother was a curandera, but kind of like homegrown. You know, I don't know, I've heard rumors that she dabbled with black magic, but, you know, she was traditional, Hispanic, grew up in the ranch. She had all kinds of stories and things she dealt with, but all I knew is that when we were sick, she would pull out the egg and start to do, you know, the curandero thing, you know, she would pray over you with the egg.
And real quick, David, for those of my audience who don't know what a curandera is, you want to explain?
Basically, to curar means to heal. So if you're a curandera or a curandero, curandero would be a male healer. Curandera would be a female healer. So that's
for my audience, not to be mixed up with culero or culera. That's a different healing for different things.
Hey, some curanderos could be a culero sometimes.
That's true. Actually, it's true. I knew a curandera, dude. She was totally a culera. But that's a mixed drink for my audience. That's when next time you guys go to the bar, ask for a culero or a culera. They'll give you, it's like a Spanish drink. Sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
No, you're good. So lots of times she would tell me to stay away from the egg because she would crack it open, put in a thing of water. I don't know if it was holy water or what, but there was some kind of thing that she would do, and she would say, stay away. And most of the time, you would see an eye on the egg. I was able to see they call it the evil eye. It looked like if someone had a red Sharpie or a red ink pen, and they drew an eye on the egg, basically. That's what it looked like.
It's also called the ojo, right? It's ojo, what they called it.
Ojo.
Yeah, the curandera that we went to, they call it ojo.
Yeah.
Or eye of envy. Yeah, sometimes.
And then that's typically what they would see and whatnot. But growing up in her house, I would see things, you know, that just weren't natural, but they were natural to me because I thought that was just everyday life. I thought everyone had their own healing. I thought that everyone had the evil eye, and I thought that I would be terrified to go walk in her house from the kitchen to the back room because I would see literally what looked like a demon, you know, just kind of hunched over in the dark, you know. But because I think with now knowing in ministry that when you dabble with that kind of stuff, when you open doors, when you play with Ouija boards, when you do all these kinds of things, it opens up doors for everything. You know, you may be trying to do it for good, but then evil will always creep in somehow. And that's what happened with my grandmother's house. My grandmother had terrible tragedies took place. I mean, within a 2-year period, her oldest son, her youngest son, and her husband died. Her youngest son was 19, murdered, stabbed to death. Her husband died of a stroke, and her oldest son died of apparent suicide. But all within a 2-year period. A lot of tragedy she suffered. She went through a lot of things, but I think a lot of it was attributed to open up those kind of doors. So anyway, I was about 3 years old, and she had this back part of her house, the old wooden house, and it had like a long corridor. It went from the kitchen to one of the bedrooms. And it was just this long corridor. She called it the den. And the place eventually, that room became dilapidated after some time. The roof was bad, so it kind of caved in on that place. So she sealed that room away from the rest of the house, ironically. But before she did that, I had a dream that I was in the kitchen side of that room facing the bedroom side, and it was completely dark except for this very light glow. It almost looked like if a fire was on, but it wasn't a raging fire because it was very soft and it was an orange glow. And in my dream, my mom, she is very young. She's 17 years older than me. So in my dream, she must have been 19, 20 years old. She was walking away from me, but she was completely naked, nude. And she was walking away from me into the darkness. And as she got further away, well, on the other end of the room was this demon. It was completely dark, and it had the silhouette of a demon that had horns and the wings and everything, and it had glowing red eyes. And it opened up its wings, and it embraced her and engulfed her in the darkness. And I woke up screaming as a kid, and I was terrified. The crazy thing about that, though, Therese, is that we didn't have HBO, cable, movies, internet. Like, why would I even dream that as a 3-year-old child? You know, I mean, it would really just, it stuck with me. That terrified me. But it made me realize that, hey, there's something more to it, more going on. Throughout growing up, different things happened. Like, I knew my uncle, her oldest son I just told you about. Mm-hmm. I knew that he was dead before anyone else knew. And I don't know how. I was about 6 years old, and I was playing in my grandmother's living room, playing with my cards or whatever, and she gets a phone call and someone's asking for him. And she's answering the phone, and she's saying, "Oh, he's not here. I haven't seen him in a few days." And then she said that I told her, that I shook my head and I said, "He's dead." And she's like, how do you know? And she hung up the phone, and she got very upset with me. She goes, "How do you know? Who told you? You know what?" And I said, "Oh, I just know that he's dead." And sure enough, they found him, in the woods nearby, that he had committed suicide. And then when I was about 10 years old, on my dad's side of the family, he's my stepdad, but I consider him my dad. We moved into my uncle's house. And this was his little brother's house. Now, he had the house before us. I can say it was his house because that was his house first. And then he moved out. We moved in. And I woke up, Therese, at 4 a.m. in terrible agony from head to toe, completely full of pain, paralyzed, hurting, cramp. I don't know what the deal was, but I was screaming. My mom came and tended to me. She's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "I don't know." She gave me Motrin, all this and other stuff. She soothed me to bed to go back to sleep. And then I woke up at 7 o'clock, completely with this pain again, like it happened again. And then it finally just went away. And then I went to school that day. Well, that uncle of mine had a friend whose little brother went to school with me. And he told me that day, he goes, "Hey, did you hear about your uncle and my brother?" And I said, "No." He said, "They were in a car accident." He goes, "I think they're at the hospital." I said, "Seriously?" And when I got home, everyone was quiet, and no one was there except the cousin of mine. And he told me, he said, "Uncle Jesse died." And I was like, "What?" And then he says, "Yeah." And then when I learned the details, this is what freaked me out. The details was at 4 a.m., they're in Skidmore, and they're heading towards Beeville from, the Sinton area. And there was this curve in Skidmore. Now they fixed the highway, but there was this very sharp left curve that would handle like this. Well, Jesse and my friend's brother was driving and going towards Beeville, and they missed that curve. And of course, I think they may have been drinking and stuff. So the car goes into the field, ejects my Uncle Jesse, ejects the friend, but the car rolls and lands on top of Jesse at 4 a.m. So he's in the car being crushed, and I feel it here in Corpus Christi. And then he finally, the medical examiner says that he passes away at 7 a.m. And I felt that pain and release around that same time. So I don't know what my grandmother did or how she was able, but for some reason I just came out extra sensitive. I don't even know, she could have prayed over my mom while my mom was pregnant, but I had that extra sensibility. But that's what led me to be a pastor, because it made me very keen and aware of God in His presence. As a kid, I never went to church. But then my neighbors would tell my dad, who did go to church, what church you gotta go to? And my dad's like, we don't go to church. Well, how does David know so much about God? I just had this already relationship happening even before I opened the Bible, went to any Sunday school. And that's pretty much why I've been called to be a minister and communicate God so easily. But that's my background. Then I meet my lovely wife here, who has a very similar background and some pretty serious experiences growing up as a child.
That's pretty badass. That's interesting, man. So you say that there's, man, I see a lot of connections there. That's interesting. And so, okay. All right, let's hear Lorraine's story.
My turn. Okay, so I'm originally born in Corpus Christi, but around 2 years old, we moved to Oregon. My dad had a best friend who was living in Oregon, so he packed us up and we moved over there. People always asked us why, but my dad couldn't find work at the time, so we ended up moving to Oregon. So I was mainly raised in Oregon. We lived in this small little house. You know how you have this eerie, movies of big houses being haunted? Well, this was a small house, little, very humble home. And I can say I'm more like I can sense things. I can feel things, see things, hear things. And it's always been coming to me, visiting me, even as a child, not knowing what it was, but I could always feel it. So in this little house, the way it was made, the steps, the doorway, and then the room, the front of the house was long. So it was like it could be living room and dining, but they changed it around. But my room, my sister and I were 5 years apart, and we shared a room. So we were up front. And then you go to the back, and there's a kitchen, and then a utility room where the washer and dryer, and then across the bathroom. And then my parents' room was in the very back. So when we were little, my dad used to tell us a story every time before we go to bed. My mom worked graveyard, so she would be at work and Dad would watch us. And my sister's bed, she had a toddler bed and I had a twin-size canopy bed. In that room that we had, there was a closet, didn't have a door, and the wall behind the closet was just plywood. And there was a hole in that closet. And it always drove me nuts.
I'm already feeling
yeah. It was so eerie. Even as a kid, Mom would put the clothes in, and if I saw that hole, I would put my clothes to cover that hole. I mean, it was a good size hole. It was big. And it was so dark in that hole. So you couldn't see what was on the other side. And I never, ever was curious enough to peek through, stick my hand through. I just covered it. So my bed was against this one wall, and my sister's was across from me, and her bed was right there, and then the closet. So no matter how my bed was angled, that hole would be there.
What? Oh,
So it drove me nuts.
it's the opposite of the
Release a hole.
the opposite of those. Yeah, the picture of Jesus didn't matter where you're staring.
Yeah.
Jesus, don't look at me that way.
Yeah, it follows you. So there was just something about that house, even as a kid. You know, you're a kid, you don't understand a lot of things, right? You just kind of like, no, it's nothing. And who can you tell about eerie things like that? So one night, my dad had told us a story. So my back was towards him, and I was facing the wall. And my dad always talked about, and I think about it now, the title was about a red pony. Red. You know, I think about why the color red. It was just, I didn't think about it until now, this moment.
Wow.
And so, because the color red in the future is going to be when I meet him.
What? He
So-
does kind of look like a pony sometimes. You know.
So my dad finished the story, and he left, and he said good night. So we said good night. Again, my back was, again, you know, facing my sister, and I'm facing the wall. So I feel this impression on the side of my bed. So I'm thinking it's my sister. So I turn around, and as I turn around, I open my eyes. It wasn't my sister. I can best describe the face as that pic. Well, it's going to be a spoiler that what we saw. When I first saw the beginning of Conjuring, the first one,
Yeah.
okay, the old woman, it was kind of like that mixed with the picture, that spoiler that we showed you.
The Insidious.
Insidious, yeah, is Insidious. The old lady in Insidious.
Which turned out being a man, but that's a long story.
Yeah, it's in the movie. But that's how it looked. It was like right there in my face, and I turned around, and I thought it was my sister, and I smiled, and it smiled back at me. And
Oh shit!
I know it gives me chills.
Look,
And-
I'm starting to get the goosebumps.
It was like, it's almost like its head was right there on my bed. So when it smiled, it
Oh,
was like that. And this happened in seconds. I screamed. Well, when I realized it wasn't my sister because she jumped from her bed. See, but for years, I had to believe it was my sister because I couldn't explain it. You know, we screamed so loud. She jumped out of bed first. I got tangled up in my blankets. And when my dad came out, my sister already was there. My dad was like a football player. I come running to him, and my dad's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I didn't want to talk. I was so scared. I didn't want to tell him. But I said it was Marisa. She was like this, you know, but it wasn't her because she was coming from her bed. But for years, I blocked it out. I just didn't want to. It was so scary. I mean, I'm a horror movie. I love ghost story movies. I love all those. It's very rare that I get that scared. I was terrified because you cannot describe the face only in what I've seen in movies. So fast forward, I had gotten really, really sick, but I was getting better. I was finally good. And it happened again, but this time it chased me. So my mom, I was in the front room. My mom was taking care of me. And I was laying down, and she was next to me. But for some reason, when I sat up, and I don't know if I felt something, I don't know what made me get up. And I looked back, and something was there behind me. So all I remember, I got up and ran, but when I looked back, it was still behind me.
Oh.
So I ran through the kitchen into my parents' bedroom. I ran to my dad. By the time I got to my parents' bedroom, it was gone. So that house.
How old were you?
I want to say I was like 9 or 10. And it was that house, that little house had something in it. And it had that little hole in that room was so scary. I don't know if it was like a portal. You know, when you get older and you start to study things and stuff. And when we moved back to Texas, my uncle, my late uncle lived there. and he said that things were happening. In fact, I have to go back. I remember he stayed with us one night. We had a rocker there, and my uncle was sleeping on the couch. I forgot about this.
Like not the kind like that, right?
Not like David in high school.
Like now, not like David in high school, right? That's a different rocker, right? It was the
This one wouldn't cry.
The creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a rocker. It would rock by itself. My uncle woke up and the rocker was going by itself.
Oh, damn.
So it wasn't just me. It was like almost like confirmation that there was something going on in the house. And because I was young, you know, they say about children, they can see and sense things even more so.
Yeah.
And then my uncle at the time, you know, was weak-minded, and it was messing with him too. So it started pretty young. My grandmother, my dad's mom, she practiced black magic.
There's our connection, you see.
Yeah. She practiced black magic. Now, my dad, I wish my dad would come on here. He would tell me some serious stories that my grandmother would do. And one story he had told me that when he was a kid, they were very poor, so all the group would sleep in one room. Yeah. And then he said that across the street there was just a street light. And he said for some reason this old lady comes walking in the street. And this is what dad doesn't tell me too much, but he had told me this because, I don't know, we got into conversation with my grandmother and why he doesn't like any of this stuff. He looked at this woman and he said that she turned around and she looked straight at him. Like he's far away at his house. He's looking through and she's looking straight at him. And he was a kid. So it's been going on for years in my family with my dad, and it followed me throughout the years. So fast forward, when I met David, our lives were parallel. My aunt,
I think that can be for the break. The second story.
Yeah, that's a second story.
Yeah.
But that's how it started in the beginning. I really felt, and I feel, you know, people don't like talking about things like this, but I think God uses certain people and calls us to be part of, to help others, you know, cleansing their homes, to believe them. Yeah, there is evil. You know, it is out there. I mean, when the enemy is roaming the earth, and a lot of people it's okay to talk about it, and we can pray for them and cast them out.
That's the third story.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just telling them, you know, that's part of the ministry, you know.
Yeah.
God picked us, and he put us together because we believe. We believe in Jesus Christ as our only Savior, and we can minister to those now. You know, we're like, he experienced it at a young age. I experienced it as a young age. So when we shared stories, it's like, I believe you. Mm-hmm. That's it. I believe you, and then God took it from there.
I think that had to be our foundation too. If we didn't believe each other and didn't have that support for one another, then, you know, all this would be for nothing, pretty much.
It's true. So, you guys hit on a couple of things there that were, I believe, are really interesting points to bring up. One is that, you know, people see all these scary movies, right? Most scary movies don't really scare me. The real life stories cannot be duplicated. Like, the stuff is so scary, you can't put it on a film. It doesn't make sense because it's too many things on so many levels from so many angles that you can never be able to put that on a film. Mm. You know, there's the feeling, the temperature, there's, you know,
That's
the
exactly
dread.
What my son that I was telling you about, he used to see things. So we were at the deer lease one day, and I wanted him to see Children of the Corn because I thought that was the scariest movie in the world, you know. And it was getting dark, and we made this little hobbit hole thing under all these oak trees, Tim and I and my nephew. And so I said, we're going to watch Children of the Corn. And my nephew and I were terrified. We're holding each other. Well, Edward, it's just zero reaction, you know. I said, Edward, isn't this scary? And he says, oh, Mom, I've seen worse than this in real life. This isn't going to do anything to me. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to. I mean, that's exactly what he says. He's not scared with scary movies or anything like that because he says what he's seen in real life is far worse than anything you could put on TV.
Yeah, that's exactly. Again, I think we're all in agreement here. That you know, I'll just say a lot of the kids that I talk to, teach, you know, talk about this stuff, and they're like, "Oh, you didn't think that was scary?" I go, "You know, none of that is scary compared to the real stuff. You know, they're used to all this. Oh, it just shows up. You know, when it shows up in real life, huh, Laura? When it's right in your face, because I've had similar things. That's why I'm like, I believe you. So it's the second thing I was going to bring up. The second point is I like how you said, "I believe you." That's part of our intro. What?
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going on a small break. We'll be back again. You're at My GhostCast. I'm your host, Rez Gonzalez. We have our guest, I'm Ed and Lorraine, and then we got our David and Laura, to be more exact.
Yeah.
And then we got our little hostess in the background here, Lydia. All right, guys, we'll be right back. Stay tuned.